understood, this purport, this whole part of the Bhagavad Gita is for the devotees at the track 1. And for them, this purport is written also. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur paraphrases the purport of the previous acharyas. He said that Arjuna should reject Kanya karmas. As far as understood, Kanya karmas we should reject if we are on the track 1. But if we are on the track 3, that by Kanya karmas we understand something different. No, same problem.
We reject all karma. Kanya karma, optional duties we reject, prescribed duties. Prescribed duties means daily duties, occasional duties. Everything is given up in practice. Only activities of bhakti are accepted. I think this is one of the reasons why our devotees find it so difficult to understand regular Varnashram Dharma. In regular Varnashram Dharma, you have an identity. Varna identities, you have identity. First identity is gender, male, female, and that is lifelong. We really don't want people switching their genders. And, very complex problem. So first of all, it is Purusha Dharma, Sri Dharma. Duties for men, duties for women. And within duties for men, Varna Dharma. Once Varna is meant to be accepted, then that Varna is accepted like that. That's all. Almost in most of the scenarios, most of the situations, their Varna will not change. Mostly. Ashrama, of course, corresponding to the Varna, you are going to progress. It's a particular phase in your life. But let's say somebody is a grihastha and he is executing the first milestone like this, minimized bhakti. He's in this stage right now. So let's say I'll give a typical example. Say somebody is a lady, the soul is in a human female body. So right now she has to execute her material duties in Krishna consciousness. She has to also execute her spiritual duties in Krishna consciousness, and the duties in the mode of goodness, jnana activities, also in Krishna consciousness. But this will occupy most of our time, and we should not be bothered about it. We should not be thinking, some sannyasi came, I should go and serve him. Oh, this happened. This is the thing. Same way for a man. And maybe say he's a grihastha, he's a Vaishya. He's a Vaishya, and that's it, until he moves on to the next phase. That's where he should be. So their life contains at least 2 tracks. Okay. In track 3, it is only 1 track. And their way of thinking about all these material duties is, if it is favorable, I accept. If it's unfavorable, I reject. So from the Varnashram point of view, they are not following Varnashram Dharma at all. So then Varnashram is like that. It's just like in the outside world, somebody is a judge. Every day expected to be a judge. It's not that today it's favorable for Krishna consciousness, he's a judge. Tomorrow, he wants to go and do something and be a police because it's favorable to Krishna. I don't know what, it's been fixed, that's it. Grihastha is grihastha, not that today I am in a sannyasi mode and I will not be carrying out my grihastha duty. There's no concept like that. That means that. So in track 1, track 2, they have a very clear understanding of material and spiritual. I have to serve Krishna in both ways. And in the first milestone, they think in that particular manner. Most of their time is going in material activities. Gauranga Bhakti, language. Track 3, there is no Gauranga Bhakti. Kami karma should be avoided, but even that they try to do it in spirit of Vishnu Bhakti in track 1. Generally it is criticized. Track 2 definitely very like heavy. In track 1 they worship demigods, not as independent gods. They worship the demigods as Vaishnavas and Vaishnavi. So they actually worship the super soul of the demigods. That's how they worship. So in the morning they'll get up, they'll do their morning rituals. In Varnashram Dharma there are rituals. You have to honor the demigods, you have to honor the sages, you have to honor your previous pious forefathers. They do all this very meticulously. They do. In track 1 they do it. You go do Surya prayers to the sun. But of course, they will, instead of saying Suryaya Nama like a Karmakanta follower, they will say Suryasta Vishnave Namaha. They will offer Mayavasanta to Lord Vishnu, who is situated within Surya. So there they remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead as a super soul of everyone involved in every transaction. But they carry them out. They carry out externally, they do these material duties. Even in fact, some of these Madhu followers, they say, what is it coming from? What is it not coming from? Veda is saying, I'm only accepting something that Veda is saying. They're not very happy about criticizing Bhakti. Some of them they accept it. Now it is bad. Well, you reach that point. You reach that point afterwards. By premature renunciation. That is how they think.
And I wrote that, for example, Nitya karma for us, like chanting 16 rounds.
No, that is within Bhakti. That is inside Bhakti. It's a jnana also that you have the fear.
This is inside Bhakti and which track?
Everywhere. It is Bhakti.
This is Navanga Bhakti.
Yeah.
Chanting 16 rounds. So why then?
What if somebody wants to chant in addition to Hare Krishna? That he wants to chant some other mantra. So the Guru might say, all right, fine, do it. Now it is optional. What if somebody wants to worship Surma Shamatra? It's Kamya. Not Kamya in the materialistic sense, but it is optional.
At the one hand, Nirakshas, they reject completely all these two types of karma, Nitya and Anityaka Kamya karma.
Yeah, they reject Kamya karma, they don't reject Kamya bhakti. So there is Nitya bhakti, Naimatika bhakti, that's different.
No.
So like that, there is Nitya Jnana, Naimatika Jnana. Okay, let's move on. 53.
When your mind is no longer disturbed by the flowery language of the Vedas.
Audio is not much clear. Why? Is the audio clear now?
When your mind is no longer disturbed by the flowery language of the Vedas, and when it remains fixed in the trance of self-realization, then we will have attained the divine consciousness.
Yes, 53, no? Yes. Nano karma phala nirvinna taya karma mithanena labdhati siddhera Kada atma sakshat kriti. Okay, I have become detached from the material benefits coming from my material duties. I execute my material duties carefully. My heart has become pure. I have begun to understand the nature of the soul. But when exactly will I attain self-realization? That is knowledge, understanding. realization. So when we attain realization, internal realization, this text 53 is an answer to that. When one is no longer disturbed by the language of the Vedas, and when one's trance, when one's perception of the self has awakened and is permanent, then only at that point, then we attain samadhi. This is that point of samadhi. Initially, one attains lower level of samadhi and realizes the soul to be different from the body and so on. And then there are different levels of samadhi. The highest perfection of self-realization is to understand that one is eternally the servitor of Krishna and that one's only business is to discharge one's duties in Krishna consciousness. A Krishna conscious person or unflinching devotee of the Lord should not be disturbed by the flowery language of the Vedas, nor be engaged in futile activities for promotion to the heavenly kingdom. In Krishna consciousness, one comes directly into communion with Krishna, and thus all directions from Krishna may be understood in that transcendental state. 54.
Arjuna Vacha Siddharthadyasya Bhavasha Samadhistasya Keshava Stitari Kim Prabhasheta Kim Asita Vrajeta Kim. Arjuna said, O Krishna, what are the symptoms of one whose consciousness is thus merged in transcendence? How does he speak and what is his language? How does he sit and how does he walk?
So here, Lord Krishna is being asked by Arjuna 4 questions on the identifiable characteristics of a person who has reached the state mentioned in text 53. Someone should read out the purport.
As there are symptoms for each and every man in terms of his particular situation, similarly, one who is Krishna conscious has his particular nature, talking, walking, thinking, feeling, etc. As a rich man has his symptoms by which he is known as a rich man, as a deceased man has his symptoms by which he is known as deceased, or as a learned man has his symptoms. So a man in transcendental consciousness of Krishna has specific symptoms in various dealings. One can know his specific symptoms from the Bhagavad Gita. Most important is how the man in Krishna consciousness speaks. For speech is the most important quality of any man. It is said that a fool is undiscovered as long as he does not speak, and certainly a well-dressed fool cannot be identified unless he speaks. But as soon as he speaks, he reveals himself at once. The immediate symptom of a Krishna-conscious man is that he speaks only of Krishna and of matters relating to him. Other symptoms then automatically follow, as stated below.
Having heard this much, Arjuna said, O Keshava, what are the characteristics of a person having fixed intelligence? What does the Sthitaprajna situated in Samadhi or a Jivan Mukta say or think or do when confronted with respect or disrespect, praise or criticism, affection or hatred? How does he act towards external objects when rejecting or employing them? I wish to know all this. One important point that Prabhupada brings up here is there are external identifiable symptoms for every stage of existence. For instance, a rich man has the symptoms by which he is known as a rich man. There is a misconception that unless you attain a particular status, you will not be able to recognize who has attained Prema Bhakti, who has attained Bhava Bhakti, and so on. But actually, there are symptoms. For instance, here, a rich man has a symptoms by which he is known as a rich man. Now, you don't have to be a millionaire to understand who else is a millionaire. A diseased man has a symptoms by which he is known as diseased. You don't have to be diseased in order to understand who else is diseased. A learned man has a symptoms. You don't have to be very learned in order to understand who is very learned. Similarly, you don't need to have Prema Bhakti in order to understand who has Prema Bhakti. You don't need to have Bhava Bhakti in order to understand who is Bhava Bhakti. This is simply deception. cheating, saying that you cannot understand how advanced I am. You need to be one to know one. Not like that. There are external identifiable symptoms. Bhava Bhakti means he will always exhibit 9 symptoms continuously without break. Prema Bhakti means he will exhibit certain identifiable symptoms. So therefore, Krishna also is being asked these questions for Sthita Prajna. 55.
Yogavan Ovacha Prajahati Yada Kavan Sarvana Parthamanogapan Atmanevatmana Krishnastitabagram Sarvadauchate. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O Partha, when a man gives up all varieties of desire for sense gratification, which arise from mental concoction, and when his mind, thus purified, finds satisfaction in the self alone, then he is said to be in pure transcendental consciousness.
एवं पृष्ठो भगवान क्रमेण चतुर्नाम कर्माः यावदध्याय मूर्ति. So when Lord Krishna was asked this question, then he gave the answer to the 4 questions that Arjuna asked. He does it until this chapter is over. So now Krishna begins to answer. So when the living entity is fully satisfied with himself being a transcendental, until then, he's not. Keep in mind here that Lord Krishna is talking about a person who gives up all varieties of desire which arise from mental concoction. Jahati yada kaman sarvan partha manogata. He gives up all kama desires, manogata, coming out of the mind. He is not giving up spiritual desires. In fact, Madhvacharya in his commentary to this word, he brings up that point. No, it's not that all desires are given. He gives up desires coming from the mind. Those desires are given. If one is engaged in Krishna consciousness, then automatically sense desires subside without extraneous efforts. Therefore, one has to engage himself in Krishna consciousness without hesitation. For this devotional service will instantly help one onto the platform of transcendental consciousness. Okay, 56.
Mana Sukheshu Vigataspara Vitaraga Bhaya Krodha Stitatir Muniruchate. One who is not disturbed in the mind, even amidst the threefold miseries, or elated when there is happiness, and who is free from attachment, fear, and anger, is called the sage of steady mind.
Yes, further sentence. अथ युक्तितः सुतप्रज्ञत्वं भाषेत इति अस्य उत्तरमाह दुःखेषु इति द्वाभ्याम्. So when the person
यः सर्वत्राणविस्नेहः तत् प्राप्य शुभाशुभम् अभिनन्दति न द्वेष्टि तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठिता. In the material world, one who is unaffected by whatever good or evil he may obtain, neither praising it nor despising it, is firmly fixed in perfect knowledge.
Here, indirectly is indirectly is
संहरते चायं कूर्मोऽङ्गानिव सर्वशः इन्द्रियाणीन्द्रियार्थेभ्यस्तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठिता. One who is able to withdraw his senses from sense objects as the tortoise draws its limbs within the cell is firmly fixed in perfect consciousness.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, no audio.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, Prabhu.
You're in Ramanujacharya's place, so you woke up immediately. According to Srila Ramanujacharya's commentary on Bhagavad Gita 2.55 to 58, there are 4 levels of self-control relevant to the practice of an aspiring transcendentalist. His commentator Vedanta Deshika has analyzed these 4 stages in detail. Somebody should remind me to post this in the group. Very useful material. The gist of that analysis is as follows. Stage 1 of self-control. Actually, Ramanujacharya has analyzed it like this. There are 4 levels of Sthitaprajna. He says that Sthitaprajna is not just a single stage. There are 4 stages, sub-stages within it. And text 58 describes the lowest stage. 57, 1 step higher. 56, 1 step higher. 55, the highest stage. So the first stage is this tortoise example. Stage 1 of self-control. When a person at this stage sees a worldly desirable sense object, he recognizes it as a desirable object and is impulsively attracted to it. So he turns his eyes away from that object to prevent himself from enjoying it. This is the stage of endeavor, yataman. This is the stage of sense control. Spiritualist mind is not yet under control and his propensity to enjoy through his senses and mind persists. Stage 2 of self-control. So this was brought out in text 57. When a person at this stage sees a worldly desirable sense object, he recognizes it as a desirable object, but he is not impulsively attracted to it. Yet he feels slight happiness upon seeing it, though he does not attempt to enjoy that sense object. This is a stage of differentiating the degrees of attraction towards sense objects, Vyatireka. At this stage, the senses have already come under control, but the mind is only partially under control. The spiritualist propensity to enjoy through his senses and mind is still there. Stage 3 of sense control. This must be text 56. When a person at this stage sees a worldly desirable sense object, he recognizes that it is a desirable object, but he is neither impulsively attracted to it, nor does he even feel happiness upon seeing it. He does not attempt to enjoy it. This is the stage of control of the internal sense organ, Ekendriya. At this stage, the spiritualist senses and mind have come under full control. His propensity to enjoy through his senses and mind remains. Then stage 4 of sense control, self-control. This is text 55. When a person at this stage sees a worldly desirable sense object, he does not recognize it as a desirable object at all. Therefore, he is not impulsively attracted to it. He does not feel happiness upon seeing it, and he does not attempt to enjoy it. This is a stage of absolute control of mind and propensities. Vashika. The spiritualist senses and mind have come under his full control, and his very propensity to enjoy through the senses and mind has disappeared. So, these are different stages. These are all Sthita Pragya. There is Sthita Pragya stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4. Okay, 59.
Those the embodied souls, they will restricted from enjoyment. The taste for sense object relating. But even such engagement by experiencing a higher taste, he is fixing consciousness.
Now, a person may be bewildered, in a very stupefied state. He may be sick. So then you notice that he is not sensually active. His senses, his body is not active. So then, would that be a characteristic of the Sthita Pragya? Are you going to say that that is a Sthita Pragya? Because so many people are, you can see, they are not engaged in external sense enjoyment. So then, if you say that the Sthita Pragya is like that, then all those people, like, for instance, a person who is too much drunk, he's also not attracted to some beautiful girl who comes somewhere else. His eye may be here, but his mind is somewhere else now. So that is not a symptom of Sthita Pragya. No? So how will you clarify this? So anticipating this, Lord Krishna, he speaks this verse. The process of withdrawing from sense objects by fasting, seen in the case of embodied jivas, is an extremely foolish process. The practice of stopping the senses through yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, and pratyahara is established in Ashtanga Yoga as a method for such people. But this rule is not accepted by those who are Sthita Pragya. Attracted to the Lord on seeing his beauty, they give up ordinary material attraction to objects. Though there is an arrangement for restraining the senses from sense objects by fasting for foolish people, there is no eternal auspiciousness for the jiva except raga marga, directed to the Supreme Atma. When that raga, attraction, attains an attractive object, it naturally gives up inferior objects. Unless one is transcendently situated, it is not possible to cease from sense enjoyment. The process of restriction from sense enjoyment by rules and regulations is something like restricting a diseased person from certain types of eatables. The patient, however, neither likes such restrictions nor loses his taste for eatables. So when you go back to this example of a person in a stupefied state or a person who's sick and therefore he's not eating delicious food and so on, that person, however, has attraction. He still has attraction. He has a taste. Absence of taste is one of the symptoms of schizophrenia. So he cannot have a taste for sense enjoyment. It is not enough just to see whether he is avoiding sense enjoyment or not. Even dharmic sense enjoyment. On top of it, does he have a taste for it or not? So Bhaktivinoda Thakur actually points out a proper Kanishtha Bhakta. He has no taste for sinful activities or pious activities. If he has a taste, he is not even a Kanishtha Bhakta. So, this is the standard of Bhakti Yoga. When one is actually Krishna conscious, he automatically loses his taste for pale things. Restrictions are there for the less intelligent neophytes in the spiritual advancement of life, but such restrictions are only good until one actually has a taste for Krishna consciousness. 60. अच्छा अस्या ज्ञाननिष्ठाया दौर्लभ्यमाह यततो हि to attain this stage of self-realization is a very rare occurrence. It's a very rare thing to come to this point of self-realization because the senses are so impetuous, they so forceful. I also want to read Bhaktivinoda Thakur's commentaries translation, text 60, page 37.
This is because for those who attempt to free the heart from material attraction of raga by the path of very roots, their extremely agitating senses push the mind towards material objects. Now, there is no worry of falling on the path of raga. Wise persons on the path of dry jnana attempt to free the heart from material attraction by the path of indifference to matter. But still, their extremely agitating senses push the mind towards material objects. There is no worry of falling on the path of raga directed towards Supreme Atma.
In Prabhupada's purport, he gives the example of Vishwamitra, who was attracted by Menaka. And he gives a counter example of Yamunacharya. Since my mind has been engaged in the service of the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, and I've been enjoying an ever new transcendental humor, whenever I think of sex life with a woman, my face at once turns from it and I spit at the thought. So this indicates that he no longer has a taste for associating with women. So the taste for sense enjoyment, now that is being discussed. It is one thing. First of all, we give up adharma, activity. And then one gives up karma dharma. But then one may have a taste. When the taste itself goes away, then it's understood that he is now realized completely. Krishna consciousness is such a transcendently nice thing that automatically material enjoyment becomes distasteful. It is as if a hungry man had satisfied his hunger by a sufficient quantity of nutritious eatables. Maharaj Ambarish also conquered a great yogi, Durvasa Muni, simply because his mind was engaged in Krishna consciousness. Savai Manah Krishna Padaravindayor Vachamsi Vaikuntha Gunanu Varnan. Durvasa Muni, he was a renunciant. Ambarish Maharaj, he was a Grihastha. On top of it, he was a Kshatriya. Durvasa Muni was a Brahmana. Still, despite that, King Ambarish exhibited the symptoms of Vasita Prajna. Durvasa Muni was in great disturbance. 61. The path of Raga means the path of being attracted to Krishna. There are two ways. Either you develop your Krishna consciousness by becoming attracted to Krishna through faith and enthusiasm, or you work it out through detachment. Okay. So the first preference is always the path of faith and enthusiasm. If you cannot sign up for track 3, okay, sign up for track 2. Cannot sign up for track 2, then go for track 1. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur says that in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is like a shopkeeper. He's trying to sell, first of all, he's trying to sell the highest product. But if you cannot buy it, buy this product. It's very nice, it's wonderful, it's great. Okay, this is also too much. Okay, yeah, this is fine, it's great, it's very easy. You just buy it. So that's what Krishna is doing in Bhagavad Gita. He presents all these things, and in middle 6 chapters, he'll be talking about maximized form of devotion service. And you'll see how Krishna talks there. So we should not get disoriented by how Krishna is talking right now. It's just that he's talking for the majority audience. The majority will be in track 1. They may not want it, nobody wants it. What can be done? You're not willing to pay. But yeah. For them also, Krishna is very kind. He's got a method for them. He doesn't say get lost. He doesn't say my way or highway. He's got something for them also. I'll find some way to bring you. So this is the pathway of detachment from matter. And this is the pathway of attachment to Krishna. The second is initially that, and then afterwards again, you're waiting for detachment. Because there are different souls. Everybody is not capable of accepting just devotional service. There are different types of faith also. There is faith in minimal bhakti, faith in maximal bhakti, faith in exclusive bhakti. One may have faith in minimal bhakti, but he may not have faith in exclusive bhakti. This is very rare. Very, very rare. How many people have this kind of faith? That all I need to do is devotional service, everything will be taken care of. Krishna Bhakti Koile Sarva Karma Kritam. Everything is taken care of. Everything means everything, including paying bills, everything, taking care of my mommy, daddy. Everything is taken care of. How many people have this degree of faith? So therefore, there is arrangement. You can have faith in maximal devotion service. But that also is right now. How many people will you give them some temple-like environment and tell them, okay, live there, as householder. But this is what 12 hours a day you engage in Panchanga Bhakti. Little, you have your family and other things. That also they may not have faith. But they do have faith in daily execution of Krishna consciousness. Minimal bhakti. That much faith they have. So Gunibhuta Bhakti, they have Shraddha for Gunibhuta Bhakti, minimized bhakti. And they may not have faith for Pradhanibhuta Bhakti. So that is one reason that when people who are engaged in maximal bhakti, when they become friends with those engaged in minimal bhakti, they are putting themselves in danger. Because these people will immediately say that, are you sure? Are you sure? Can you believe all this? But those who are engaged in maximal bhakti, they directly, when they engage in Krishna consciousness, Krishna is directly reciprocating with them. Okay. So they can experience that. So it is based on that they function on a higher platform or on a lower platform.
So this is about step number 3.
Oh. Gaudiya Vaishnava is all focused on track number 3.
How do these 3 tracks correspond to the 3 levels of devotees? This is all about track number 3 only.
No, not necessarily. Madhyamadhikari is a person who has attained Bhava Bhakti. Uttamadhikari is a person in Prema Bhakti. So one engaged in Sadhana Bhakti is in Kanishta status. One can choose to progress within a few days, few weeks, months, years, lifetimes, etc. So this is only speed. Why is it the same thing? If I want to be, I want to gradually progress from Kanishta to Madhyama, and then progress from Madhyama to Uttama. It's all up to me. I decide how fast or slow I should be.
So the difference is actually in the mentality. Because Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he was also a judge in the material point of view, he had some material duty.
No, but ultimately he also gave it up. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur points this out. He wrote an article describing the 26 qualities of a Vaishnava as found in Bhaktivinoda Thakur. There he points out that Bhaktivinoda Thakur has written one song, Jedena Grihe, Bhajana Dekhi, Grihete Goloka Bhai. That on that day when I see Bhajana Kriya happening in my home, I see nothing but Goloka Vrindavan. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says, by looking at that, while seeing that verse, people should not become bewildered and think, I can be like this for whole life. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he understood that this can lead to a problem. So he himself at a particular point in time, he gave it up and he accepted Babaji Vesh from Gaur Kishore Das Maharaj. He became a renunciant. He also ultimately came to this status, third milestone.
So from the external point of view, Bhaktivinoda Thakur has switched from the
Correct. From he himself, as he promotes, you move from Swanishta to Parinishta to Nirapeksha. It looks like he must have demonstrated it. Actually, in one place, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's devotees can directly move on to the second status. They don't need to become Kanishta Vaishnava to become Madhyama Vaishnava. They can directly become Madhyama Vaishnava and then move to the status. He is a Nitya Siddha. We know that. But out of great compassion, because he knows that we generally imitate, very rarely we do what the Acharya says. We try to imitate as much as possible. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur knows that. He demonstrated that also. The example for a Nirapeksha given by Valadev Vidyabhushan is one lady devotee named Gargi. He was a female renunciant from the Upanishads. It's not that Nirapeksha has to be a man, it can be a woman also, but completely engaged in devotional service. No other restrictions, no other responsibilities. Okay, text 61.
तानि सर्वाणि अयम्य त्वासुतमत्परः रसयस्य इन्द्रियाणि तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठितः. One who restrains his senses, keeping them under full control, and fixes his consciousness upon me, is known as a man of pure intelligence.
Here's an objection that Lord Krishna is dealing with. Nirjita indriyana api atma anubhavana pratitaha. There are those who have conquered their senses, but you don't see them, you don't notice that they have become self-realized. Then what needs to be done? Tani sarvani samyamya matparaha manishtaha samyuktaha krita atma samadhir asita tishteta. One has to bring all the senses under control and focus them on me, on Krishna. Then one will become self-realized. Mad bhakti prabhavena sarvendriya videpurvika swatma drishti sulabha iti bhava. When one does that, then by the force of devotion service unto me, bhakti, all the senses will be conquered, and then one can very easily attain self-realization. And this is stated in the Smriti. When Lord Vishnu is situated within the heart, he burns up all the defects of the meditator, just as fire burns up all fuel. This is an answer to the question, Kim Asisa? How is he situated? Again, Prabhupada brings up for discussion Durvasa Muni and Ambarish Maharaj. Now, this series of verses, no, Savai Mana Krishna Padara and Deo. Prabhupada quotes it more than once in his Gita purpose. It's very, very important. King Ambarish fixed his mind on the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, engaged his words in describing the abode of the Lord, his hands in cleansing the temple of the Lord, his ears in hearing the pastimes of the Lord, his eyes in seeing the form of the Lord, his body in touching the body of the devotee, his nostrils in smelling the flavor of the flowers offered to the lotus feet of the Lord, his tongue in tasting the tulasi leaves offered to him, his legs in traveling to the holy place where his temple is situated, his head in offering obeisances unto the Lord, and his desires in fulfilling the desires of the Lord. And all these qualifications made him fit to become a matpara devotee of the Lord. Matpara. The word matpara comes in the verse, in relationship with me. Fixes his consciousness upon me. This is, senses can be completely controlled only by the strength of devotional service to Krishna. The Yoga Sutra also prescribes meditation on Vishnu and not meditation on the void. The so-called yogis who meditate on something other than Vishnu simply waste their time in a vain search after some phantasmagoria. We have to be Krishna conscious, devoted to the personality of God. This is the aim of the real yoga, yoga as it is properly performed. In other words, one should engage in Yukta Vairagya. Okay, take 62 and 62.
While contemplating the object of the senses, the person develops attachment for them, and from that attachment, lust develops, and from lust, anger arises.
Take 63 also.
Krodha bhavati sammoha, sammoha priti vibrama, priti dhamasat buddhinasho, buddhinasat anusati. From anger, complete delusion arises, and from delusion, bewilderment of memory. When memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost, and when intelligence is lost, one falls down again into the material pool.
Vijitendriyasyapi nahi aniveshita manasaha punaha anartha durvaraha. Even if one has got the senses fully under control, if his mind is not absorbed in me, again he is going to experience problems. That is unavoidable. That is now pointed out in 2 verses. On the other hand, examine the anarthas of practice of Palgu Vairagya on the path of Vidhi. In many circumstances, this is the progress of Palgu Vairagya. One who is not Krishna conscious is subjected to material desires while contemplating the objects of the senses. So if you are Krishna conscious, then even when you contemplate the objects of the senses, you are not subjected to material desires. But when you are not Krishna conscious, if you do not fix yourself on Krishna's, you don't fix your mind, your senses, everything in devotional service like Ambarish Maharaj, then you get completely caught in the force of Maya. Now, each of this is a state. Vishayan, Shabdadin, Sukhahetutva Buddhya Jayataha. So when one meditates on sound, touch, form, taste, smell, these sense objects, considering them to be causes of happiness, punah punah chintayataha, again and again contemplating like this, yogina. He's a yogi, he's trying to control his senses. Teshu sangaha asakti bhavati, then he becomes attached to them. Sangatheto, and because of that attachment, Teshu kamatrishna jayate, he becomes filled with the thirst for sensual desires, or desires for sensual gratification. Kamacha kenachit pratihata krodha chitta jwalas pratighatakaha. And then from that desire, as it becomes obstructed, then one develops anger. His heart burns. Krodhat samoha, and from anger one develops complete bewilderment of his memory of the very practice into which he has previously entered. He loses his realization about what should be done, what should not be done. Samohat smritehe indriya vijayadi prayatna anusande vibhramaha vibramshaha. Then he becomes bewildered about his very endeavor to conquer the senses and so on. Pratibhamshad buddhe atma jnana tasya adhyavasayasya nashana. Then finally, his intelligence, when the memory is lost and intelligence is lost, which means he now gives up his very determination to attain spiritual realization. Buddhinashat pranashyati. Punar vishaya bhoga nimagnaha bhavati samsarati. Then again he falls into sense enjoyment. He just goes through birth, death, old age, disease. Mat anashrayana durbhalam manaha tani swa vishayar yojayanti iti bhavaha. All of this is because he did not take shelter of me. He did not take shelter of me, but he was trying to control his senses. Controlling the senses is fine. Keeping the senses from sense objects is fine. Okay. But not fixing one's mind and senses on Krishna, that is a bigger problem. So therefore, even though he took up a very noble endeavor, everything has now turned out to be a failure. Tathacha mano vijigishuna, for a person who has a desire to conquer his mind, mad upasanam vijaya. Worship of myself has been prescribed. So unless one worships Lord Krishna, one cannot actually get out of it. Because the senses require real engagements. Everybody is bewildered, including great demigods. But you see, Haridas Thakur, he was not bewildered even when Maya Devi herself came. Another example is Yamanacharya. He is also stating that because his mind is now fixed on Krishna, now he spits at the thought of sense enjoyment. This is all because of Valgovairagya or shallow renunciation. By development of Krishna consciousness, one can know that everything has its use in the service of the Lord. Those who are without knowledge of Krishna consciousness artificially try to avoid material objects. And as a result, although they desire liberation from material bondage, they do not attain to the perfect stage of renunciation. Their so-called renunciation is called Phalgu, or less important. On the other hand, a person in Krishna consciousness knows how to use everything in the service of the Lord. Therefore, he does not become a victim of material consciousness. '64.
When a person free from all attachment and aversion and able to control his senses through regulated principles of freedom, can obtain the complete mercy of the Lord.
Manasi nirjite, when the mind is brought under control, shotradi nirjaya abhavaha, even lack of control of the ears and other senses, nadosha, is not a problem. Iti Vidvan, while saying this, Vrajetakam ityasya uttaram aha. While saying this, the Lord gives an answer to the question, how he walks, how does he conduct himself externally. Ityaha rage ityadi here ashtati, in 8 verses beginning with text 64. Taking support of the yoga of Yukta Vairagya, the yoga of Yukta Vairagya means the sadhana, the pursuit, the practice of Yukta Vairagya, while giving up attachment and hatred through fixed intelligence, suitably engaging the senses, subservient to Atma, to all sense objects. The independent person with Hey Atma attains satisfaction of the heart. He attains complete mercy. Although the person in full Krishna consciousness may apparently be on the sensual plane, because of his being Krishna conscious, he has no attachment to sensual activities. The Krishna conscious person is concerned only with the satisfaction of Krishna and nothing else. Therefore, he is transcendental to all attachment and detachment. If Krishna wants, the devotee can do anything which is ordinarily undesirable. If Krishna does not want, he shall not do that which he would have ordinarily done for his own satisfaction. Okay. Text 65 and 66.
For one just satisfied in Krishna consciousness, the threefold limit of material existence exists no longer. In such satisfied consciousness, one's intelligence is so well established.
66.
Shastri Tasya Navachayu Tasya Bhavana Navacha Samayata Sante Asantasya Buddha. One who is not connected with the Supreme, can have neither transcendental intelligence nor a steady mind. Without this, there is no possibility of peace. And how can there be any happiness without it?
Notice the word prasada here. It first appears in text 64 as prasadam, and there it means the mercy of the Lord. And then in text 65, you come across it again in the form of prasade, which means on achievement of the causeless mercy of the Lord. And the modified form of the same word comes as prasanna chetasaha. Prasanna. Prasanna means of prasanna chetasaha means of the happy minded. Prasanna means happy. Prasada actually means happiness, and that very happiness has to be given by the Supreme. So we are talking of internal satisfaction. Prasade sati kim syat. What happens when one's mind is satisfied? Then he loses all kinds of material unhappiness. Purvottamartham yatareka mukhenaha ayuktasya ayoginaha mad aniveshita manasaha buddhihi uttalakshana. Then what has been taught is now being repeated indirectly in text 66. He's speaking in the opposite manner. One who is not connected with the Spirit. He cannot have a transcendental intelligence. He cannot have a steady mind. He cannot have peace. So this is the same thing he's saying in two different ways to make sure that we understand it clearly. Ashantasya tat trishna kulasya sukham swaprakasha ananda atma anubhava lakshanam kutah syat. Where is the question of this person having any happiness? Happiness means happiness derived from self-realization. There are different levels of that. First of all, when you realize that we are spirit souls, not these bodies, that very realization gives great bliss. Then there is realization that the spirit soul is not just different from the body, but is also qualitatively one with the Supreme Lord. That gives further bliss. And then you realize that you are eternally related to the Supreme Lord as a servant, which means that you realize that you are dependent on Him, but qualitatively you are one with Him. That gives even greater bliss. So in that way, one experiences increasing amounts of spiritual happiness, direct spiritual happiness. So without that, there is a question of peace. And same point Krishna brings it out in text 29 of 5th chapter, the peace formula. When one understands that Krishna is the only enjoyer of all the good results of sacrifice and penance, that he is the proprietor of all universal manifestation, and that he is a real friend of all living entities, then only one can have real peace. So, unless one comes to this point, one cannot experience peace. Can someone read Bhaktivinoda Thakur, his commentary in the form of translation, both for 65 and 66?
Wherein satisfaction of the heart that is happy, all suffering is destroyed. The emptiness of the good which satisfies the heart, which is become fixed in the desired object and freedom. Notice this also, for the person without meditation on the highest level, how is possible to have peace from inferior level? And how can the person divide the peace against the highest level? Thus, the negligence of person without proper meditation cannot meditate on the Lord, which is the meditation of the highest level. The person without engaging in yoga cannot meditate on the Lord. One cannot attain peace from material level without meditation on the highest level. If one has no peace, how can one experience the highest happiness, peace of heart?
So unless one attains that taste, how can he be fixed on the higher platform of fixing his mind, there is no question of material happiness ever being steady. That is because this entire world is Jagat. It's always changing. So it is understood that this world is going to give you Harsha Shoka. Harsha means delight, Shoka means lamentation, sorrow. This is the only thing that you get. You get different varieties of it. But spiritual realization is not like that. Text 67.
At a strong wind, goes water, then one of the home complete the mind focus. Carry away and
Man niveshita manaskataya indriya niyamana abhave doshamaha. But if one's mind is fixed on the Supreme Lord, even to not control a single sense is a problem. What is that? Oh, it's my phone. Please just turn it off. Off. Mercilessly off it. Just off. So even if a single sense is not brought under control, it will be a problem. That is a major trouble. Next, let me just bring it out clear. What is the current verse? Yeah, correct. I was thinking there was a typing error. There's no typing. We fix our mind on Krishna. It also fix our senses. Everything has to be very carefully done. Okay, can you hear me now? Am I audible? Or is it as bad as before? Voice is very low. Can you just hear the mic? So anyway, it's all in. Wait, me. Okay, now, how is it now? Is it better? Worse? Equally bad? No means no voice at all. Am I audible? Inaudible? Not clear. So is this better? Is this better with low volume? We're trying to solve this problem, but it will take a while to solve it. I just don't want it becoming a daily problem. It's not safe. Actually, I have some. Can you see if there's a mic inside my bag? I think that, yeah, just have a look inside a plastic bag. No. Yeah, in the main. No. Yeah, there is a mic. This may work out. I was. No, I don't know if this has some battery or what this is. Huh? Why is this so long also? I don't know. What happened? Something happened. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. What is this? You're stuck and caught up with all this mic katha now. Okay, at least something. What? Now what is the latest problem? Okay, is it clear now? How do you know it's coming? From this you understand. Okay, let's just continue. Come on, this is all getting too much. Where did I stop? As mentioned in the life of Maharaj Ambarish, all of the senses must be engaged in Krishna consciousness, for that is the correct technique for controlling the mind. So, this is what I wanted to say. See, even here, this is minimal engagement in bhakti, but the practitioner is very, very focused. He's either engaged in bhakti in Krishna consciousness, or in jnana in Krishna consciousness, or karma in Krishna consciousness. He is not engaged in any of these activities without Krishna consciousness. nor does he ever touch adharma. There are two types of adharma. There is sinful activities, papa, and there is aparadha. Bhaktivinoda Thakur has explained the distinction between papa and aparadha. Papa is a very general term. It refers to any forbidden activity. Aparadha refers to sinful activities which are directed at the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Like, for instance, all the 10 offenses that we hear about, all of them are actually simple activities which are directed at the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Knowingly or unknowingly, but they are directed at you. You're doing some forbidden activity in relationship to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You are insulting Krishna or Krishna's representative spiritual master, or that which gives you knowledge about Krishna, the Vedas, or you're criticizing Krishna's devotees who in fact introduce you to Krishna consciousness. You're criticizing the demigods who are also Krishna's representatives, or you are equating Krishna with them, or So aparadha is the worst subset of sinful activity. Just as bhakti is the most pious activity that you can engage in, aparadha is the worst sinful activity you can engage in. So adharma includes sinful activities and offenses. So we give up that, but all the other activities have to be engaged in with great focus. With great focus. Okay, take 68.
Therefore, O mighty arms, one whose senses are restrained from their objects is certainly of truly intelligence.
Ebishlokaihi Bhagavan Nivishtataya Indriya Videyaha Stitapragyasya Siddhasya Swabhavikaha. So from these shlokas, we understand that because he is absorbed in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that means he is absorbed in Krishna's name, form, qualities, pastime, his senses have come under control. And because his senses have come under control, we understand that he is exhibiting the symptoms of a perfect soul, the Sthita Pragya, one whose consciousness is fixed. This is natural for him. Sadhakasya tu sadhana bhutaha. But for a sadhaka, the very same set of activities are prescribed duties. He has to do all these things. So what is natural for the perfect soul, they themselves are presented in the form of prescriptions and prohibitions for sadhaka. It's not that we do something else and finally we come up with something else. The one who is a perfect devotee, he will naturally accept the same prescriptions and prohibitions. Right now, we are engaging in those prescriptions and prohibitions with force. But the perfect soul, he will naturally have a taste for all the activities that are prescribed. He will have a distaste for all the activities that are prohibited. This is important to understand because we have some misconception that anybody who does something strange, we have a tendency to think he must be some avadut perfect devotee. If you carefully examine, it's not like that. Because even the persons who appear to be avadut, they don't have a taste for any simple activity. For instance, there was a great soul named Vamshidas Babaji. He was recognized by Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur as a perfect pure devotee. So he would, there's no Mangalarti, nothing for him. The whole day he would be awake and he would be talking to his deity. He would be chanting. He had a hut in Navadip town. Sometimes Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur would give he would send through some disciple, some shark or something which was grown from the land that belonged to Chaitanya Mat. So then Vamshidas Babaji would be very happy. Oh, this is growing, coming from Mayapur. I should offer it to God and give it. And then sometimes he would just forget to eat it also. So he was just something. But certain devotees who had spent time with him, they also noted that Vamshidas Babaji, there was one Jatishekar Das, disciple of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. He spent quite some time with him. So in his memories, he notes that he was once with Vamshidas Babaji for more than 10 days. He did not see him sleep. He did not see him pass stool or urine for 10 days. Simply absorbed in, just completely absorbed in devotional service to God Nitai. When you would look at the wheel of a moving train, you would immediately say, oh, that looks like a rasa dance of Lord Krishna. This is how when Krishna dances, this is how they dance. If you look from above, this is how Radharani and Krishna dance and Krishna expands himself. They all move in a particular manner. Like this, and they move like that. So when you look at the moving, when you look at a train and the moving, it's like Krishna's rasa dance. Whatever happens, you would just think something. Once he was in the middle of a forest, one of the servants, nobody around, somewhere in Orissa, forest, middle of the night, so many young, beautiful, bright, shining ladies, they came and they worshipped him and went. Middle of nowhere. And this is in 1940s or something like that, when in India, women don't come out of home at night. Young women don't come out of home at night. Hindus, they were all like that. They were well dressed with ornaments, some demigoddesses or something. Offered respect. But you notice that did not have extraordinary. How can somebody be like that? Doesn't pass stool, doesn't pass urine, forgets to sleep, simply chanting all the time. Prabhupada spoke about him. He simply talked to Gauranga, his deity, that's all. Just different things. When he lost something, then he would say, oh, Krishna stole it. When he got something, then he would say, oh, Krishna gave it. What? That just like we talk with each other so many things, he is talking. He is not in some delusion, imagining he's talking. He's really talking. Only we are deaf, we cannot hear. Otherwise, Krishna has so many interesting things to talk to his devotees. He was in Vatsalya Rasa. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur liked him. When he would come to see him sometimes, then Bhakti would tell his servant. No, he would tell you. Most of the time, he would actually be talking to his deity. Manjari is coming. I have to go see. And he will go see Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. Manjari is coming. Radha also will come. Okay, 69. 68 we did know.
What is nice for all beings is the time of awakening for self-control, and the time of awakening for all beings is nice for the introspective.
So then we have these kinds of persons who are very much interested in sadhana. Sadhaka avastasya sthita pragyasya indriya samyamaha prayatna sadhya ityuktam. It is stated that for a person who is situated on the platform of sadhana, sense control, which is actually a symptom of sthita pragya, has to be attained with great endeavor. Siddhavasya tu tasya niyamaha swabhavika. But for a person who is situated on the platform of perfection, that kind of sense control is natural. With that in mind, he speaks this current verse about the one who experiences day and the other one who experiences night. I want someone to read Bhaktivinoda Thakur, text 69. Read out the translation from his commentary.
There are two types of that inclined to Atma and that dedicated to material. The intelligence dedicated to Atma is a type of mind or ordinary jiva, builder of mind. All jivas, builder and matter, are achieved in that mind cannot attain knowledge of Atma. But the essence prajna remains awake in that mind and directly experience directly experience with strictly intelligence to Atma. On the other hand, in intelligence dedicated to matter, the jiva reserves the matter is awake and directly experiences the limitation in event and object strictly in that intelligence. That is a type of night or a spiritual peace. These differently, all things subject, to give happiness and suffering of people in samsara, except all things subject for the Vidvan, as well as necessary without being contaminated. They expect all things and senses objects to full right, God, Brahman. The happiness and suffering of people in samsara, indifferently and as well as necessary without being contaminated.
There are two classes of intelligent men. One is intelligent in material activities for sense gratification, and the other is introspective and awake to the cultivation of self-realization. Activities of the introspective sage or thoughtful man are nights for persons materially absorbed. Materialistic persons remain asleep in such a night due to their ignorance of self-realization. The introspective sage remains alert in the night of the materialistic man. The sage feels transcendental pleasure in the gradual advancement of spiritual culture, whereas the man in materialistic activities, being asleep to self-realization, dreams of varieties of sense pleasure, feeling sometimes happy and sometimes distressed in a sleeping condition. The introspective man is always indifferent to materialistic happiness and distress. He goes on with his self-realization activities undisturbed by material reactions. In other words, the one who is pursuing spiritual realization and the one who is pursuing materialistic experience, they are in opposite tracks. So what is considered to be success for a spiritualist is considered a great failure for the materialist. And what is considered a great success for the materialist is considered a great failure for the materialist. You simply cannot have the best of both the worlds. At some point, you have to realize that and then redirect your energies in your life. Two opposite tracks, or two different sets of values. Text 70. Uktam bhavam sputennaha apuryeti. This is now clarified by Lord Krishna in this verse. That person who is fully satisfied by his own constitutional position, he is comparable to an ocean, which is the same whether in the rainy season rivers enter into it or not. Similarly, sarve kama prarabdha akrishna vishayaha yam pravishanti. Into him enter sense objects. That means sense objects come towards him. Why do they come? Because they are attracted by his prarabdha karma. There are different types of karmic reactions, you know. There is karmic reactions which have begun to fructify. There are karmic reactions that are not scheduled for experience in this life. They are called aprarabdha. So the aprarabdha ones, they are deleted from our queue the moment you take to pure devotion service into Krishna. But actually speaking, when you take to pure devotion service unto Krishna's lotus feet, even the prarabdha karma is destroyed. But for those who have not yet come to that platform, then prarabdha karma is not destroyed. when all of these karmic reactions are destroyed, then that is his last life. Until then, he will have another body. That is his last life. So, in the slow pathway and all that, they're just working out that methodology by which all of their karmic reactions will go away. For which you need to come to the point of pure devotion service. Pure devotion service, you should keep in mind. Now, how will I use the board? Okay. See, there are different aspects of devotion service. One is Shraddha, faith. Another is Pragya, understanding. Another is Priha, desires. And another is Kriya. Four aspects of Krishna consciousness. Faith, that is one aspect. Understanding, that's another aspect. Desire, that's another aspect. And then Kriya, activity, that's another aspect. We can easily understand that there are four components. One can understand that these four are components by analyzing Bhaktivinoda Thakur's summary of Lord Chaitanya's teachings called Dashamul. Under 10 headings, he has summarized Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings. One should have faith in the Vedas. That's how Lord Chaitanya begins. The Vedas teach. Amnaya Praha. So that means one should have faith in the Vedas. So one should have faith in the Vedas and the conclusion of the Vedas also. Then Pragya means understanding. You should have a clear understanding of the conclusions of the Vedas. That Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that the living entities are his eternal servants, they are qualitatively one with him, they are eternally dependent on him. Those who are submissive to him, they are in the spiritual world. Those who are averse to him, they are in the material world, and so on. Spriha. We should aspire to come to the point of uninterrupted, unmotivated, eternal devotional service to Krishna. That should be our desire, that we should desire the goal. Prema Pumartho Mahan. We desire Prema Bhakti as our ultimate goal. The means to that is devotion service, sadhana bhakti. Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu, Smaranam Padasevaram, Archanam Mandaram Dasam, Sakyam. So, when one executes pure devotion service in terms of all of its aspects properly, then one is freed from all of his karmic reactions. Until then, these karmic reactions are there. So, even when one's karmic, because of his previous karmic reactions, he is placed in contact with sense objects, this person, he will not become disturbed by that. He will not start to re-hanker for sense objects. He will become indifferent, he'll just leave it. He'll simply just leave it. A person full of desires can never be peaceful. Just as water, though entering the full ocean, cannot disturb the ocean, similarly all desires, though entering the Siddhapragya stage, cannot disturb him. Thus he alone achieves peace. As long as one has a material body, the demands of the body for sense gratification will continue. The devotee, however, is not disturbed by such desires because of his fullness. Now, this happens until when one until he comes to the point of offenseless chanting of Krishna's holy name. When one offenselessly chants Krishna's holy name, then even within one lifetime, one actually changes his body. So there is the misconception that here Prabhupada is here Prabhupada is saying, as long as one has a material body, the demands of the body for sense gratification will continue. Okay, so based on this, there's the misconception that, okay, I will be lusty until I die. I will be angry until I die. So my Vacho Vegam, Manasa Krodha Vegam, Jishva Vegam, Udaropastha Vegam, they will all continue until I die because they're part of my body. So don't expect that these will reduce and go away. It will never go away. And when I die, everything is all I get. On one shot, I get Artha Nivritti, Nishtha, Ruchi, Asakti, Bhava, Prema. Bumper deal. But that is not true actually, because like here, Prabhupada, he writes, because of the material body, every living entity in material existence is always disturbed by Shadguna, 6 waves: hunger, thirst, lamentation, illusion, invalidity, and death. Furthermore, another Shadguna are the mind and 5 sense organs. Not to speak of a sanctified devotee, even a Chandala, an outcast who is untouchable, is immediately freed from material bondage if he utters the holy name of the Lord even once. Sometimes caste Brahmanas argue that unless one changes his body, one cannot be accepted as a Brahmana. For since the present body is obtained as a result of past actions, one who has in the past acted as a Brahmana takes birth in a Brahman family. Therefore, they contend without such a Brahminical body, one cannot be accepted as a Brahmana. Herein it is stated, however, that even a Vidura Vigata, a Chandala, a 5th class untouchable, is freed if he utters the holy name even once. Being freed means that he immediately changes his body. Sanatana Goswami confirms this. Yatha kanchanatam yapi kamsyam rasa vidhanataha tatha diksha vidhanena dvijapvam jayate nanam. When a person, even though a Chandala, is initiated by a pure devotee into the chanting of the holy name of the Lord, his body changes as he follows the instructions of the spiritual master. Although one cannot see how his body has changed, we must accept on the grounds of the authoritative statements of the Shastras that he changes his body. That means he gives up his present body, and inconceivably he has accepted a new body. This is to be understood without arguments. This verse clearly says, Sajahati Bandham. He gives up his material bondage. The body is a symbolic representation of material bondage according to one's karma. Although sometimes we cannot see the gross body changing, chanting the holy name of the Supreme Lord immediately changes the subtle body, and because the subtle body changes, the living entity is immediately freed from material bondage. After all, changes of the gross body are conducted by the subtle body. After the destruction of the gross body, the subtle body takes a living entity from its present gross body to another. In the subtle body, the mind is predominant, and therefore, if one's mind is always absorbed in remembering the activities or the lotus feet of the Lord, he is to be understood to have already changed his present body and become purified. Therefore, it is irrefutable that a Chandala or any fallen or low-born person can become a Brahmana simply by the method of bona fide initiation. Another purport, 3rd canto. Here also Prabhupada says that. The Lord says that he takes charge of one who surrenders unto him. Now, at the time of initiation, Diksha Kale Bhakta Gore Atma Samarpan. At the time of initiation, the devotee surrenders unto Krishna's lotus feet. Okay. On one hand, externally surrendering to Krishna's representative, but internally he is supposed to do that 6 items of surrender is there. You accept everything favorable for Krishna, whatever is unfavorable you reject it, you accept Krishna as a protector, like that. Okay. So internally I am supposed to surrender to Krishna. Externally I am surrendering to Krishna's representative. Only then Diksha is complete. So at that time, Krishna actually gives that devotee a spiritual body. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu mentions this. Now, this of course, if externally I am sitting for initiation, but internally I am not surrendering fully to Krishna, then that external initiation has happened, but internal initiation is still waiting. Until I surrender, then afterwards initiation is complete. Okay. So, but then afterwards one's body is changed. One's body is changed. Again here, as a base metal, like bell metal, can be changed into gold. Similarly, one becomes a Brahmana. In fact, that is why we use the expression second birth. Twice born. It is sometimes remarked that by the chanting process, one begins to purify himself and can take birth in his next life in a Brahmin family and then be reformed. But at this present moment, even those who are born in the best Brahmin families are not reformed, nor is there any certainty that they are actually born of Brahmin fathers. Whether one has acquired the qualification of a Brahmana depends on the judgment of the bona fide spiritual master. Anyway, there are Now, Prabhupada points out that actually one has changed his body. So the body of a pure Vaishnava at once changes transcendently when he gives himself up to the service of the Lord, as trained by a qualified Vaishnava. So unless one, that is the reason also why Paramahamsas or sannyasis, their bodies are not burnt. Their bodies are actually preserved. And in fact, their body is even brought inside a temple. You even show the deity the body. Because normally dead bodies, there's no question of bringing a dead body into a temple. If a child passes urine inside the temple, the whole temple has to be cleaned with the cow dung and all that. So where is the question of bringing a dead body? But if a person has become fully pure, then his body has changed. His body has changed. So because his body has changed, then in the new body there is no demand for sense gratification. So if one has actually progressed or not, but until then it will happen. But even then, that devotee is not disturbed. He is not disturbed. One who has lost all inclinations for material sense gratification, although the desires are present. Okay, we'll stop with that. Already late. What time will it be? Yeah, 11:40 will be. 11:35 will be.